big game of the weekend in European football is arguably Borussia Dortmund against Bayern Munich. That one's on Saturday evening, level on points in the Bundesliga. I'm delighted to be joined on the line by Raphael Honigstein. How are you keeping, Rafa?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm all right. Were you on the goal show last night?
No, I had a week off.
They don't go back to studio quite as often as they did. I have a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old who insist on only watching the goal show, so I don't get to watch full Champions League games. It is without doubt the greatest invention that there's been in modern TV.
Well, your kids choose wisely, that's all I can say.
It is glorious, and obviously it means you miss out on maybe a lot of the context of things. And the Borussia Dortmund goal came up last night, and you sort of look up and you see this player weaving through the area and this fabulous finish, and go, geez, which of their attacking players is that? And then it flashes up and Jude Bellingham is wheeling away in celebration. You go, that is not a goal of a central midfielder. Like, that is a goal of a number 10, of somebody just of extreme attacking talent. This kid seems to have it all.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. At the moment, he can play with slightly more freedom going forward because Marco Reus isn't there, who usually holds more of a number 10 position. And quite crucially, he's got somebody behind him, Sadio Mane, new signing from Cologne, who actually is a defensive midfielder, because Borussia Dortmund have been a little bit lightweight in that department. Emre Can hasn't been a huge success since coming back. But yesterday, they had 3 midfielders, and that gave a bit of a platform to Jude to make these runs, which fans from Birmingham will be used to. You know, he used to do a lot more than just be a central midfielder, if you will. He would go into the box quite often, and right now we can see just how dangerous he can be there as well.
How we all laughed when they retired his jersey. I don't think anybody is questioning that decision right now. The way you're talking there, like a question of what's his best position, then doesn't seem appropriate. Like, is it that he can do anything if needed? He can play in a more defensive role and do a tidy job there, but actually if he can be freed, and if there's somebody at Declan Rice, for example, at an international level who can sit behind him, that freedom, he absolutely relishes it.
Yeah, I think his talent would be slightly wasted if he was just a holding midfielder, just sitting in front of the back four. I don't think you'd get the most out of him. He has to be an 8. Ideally, he has to be one of 2 8s, I think, in a midfield 3. I think that's where he would thrive. And then it comes down to, the situation. Can he go into the box? Can he make a wide run? Where's the space? Where's the best use of this incredible, application that he has? When he starts running with the ball, there's almost no stopping him. He's got real pace, great technique as well. A classic sort of midfield, all-action superstar in the making, I think.
When Borussia Dortmund signed him, they paid a lot of money, was it, I think, reported in around 25 million plus many add-ons. They obviously knew they were getting a very talented player. Has there been a surprise as to how dominant a midfielder's become so quickly?
Yes, I think so, because they thought he might take 6 months to, feel his way into the team, but he basically became a starter more or less straight away. And then he became a regular more or less straight away. And if you see his numbers, the season before last, there was still sort of the 60, 70 minutes mark. He would often be one of the first ones to come off, I think, still being very young. They were very careful. Now it's not just a full 90 minutes, but he is the captain as well in the absence of Marco Reus. And he is the guy that they absolutely rely on. Now that reflects both really well on him and not so well on Dortmund, because you'd expect Germany's second wealthiest club and one of the, top 13 or 14 richest teams in the world to have the depth in the squad that they don't need a 19-year-old to make things happen for them. But that's where we are. Both a chance for him to shine, but also perhaps testament just to how good he is, because he can actually be so dominant in a team that collectively isn't that good at the moment.
What have you heard about him, or what have you got a sense about him personality-wise, particularly with what's coming down the track for him over the next few months, where a nation will expect? He's gone from a position of being a squad member at Euro 2020 just over a year ago, where it was, Calvin Phillips was the man. Who knows if Phillips will even be fit, but it's hard to see England starting the World Cup without Bellingham in midfield, and that brings a whole other world of pressure onto his shoulders. Is that something that should sit comfortably with him?
I have no reason to believe that it won't. Dortmund officials have been raving about his willingness to learn, about his professionalism. He's the guy who will seek out in the dressing room the most experienced pros to sit next to them, to learn from them, rather than hang out with kids his age who are perhaps slightly less serious still as teenagers. He's been getting better and better and better because he wants to get better and better, and he wants to learn, and he's never seems to be fazed by the occasion. Now, England, being a starter at the World Cup is, by admission, a pressure of a different magnitude, especially in this Gareth Southgate team, which I think manages to diminish players rather than lift them to next level. So it will be difficult for him just on the basis of that. But there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that this guy will succeed in almost any team because he's got so much talent and so much of a strong mentality that you need to perform at this level as well.
There's a lot of transfer speculation already around what will happen next summer, and as we know, when it comes to these supersized transfers, as it'll be, it's not as simple as where the player wants to go or what club is most desperate or what club will even pay the most amount of money necessarily. There's agents involved. Is Liverpool a team that were strong favourites maybe 6 months ago? Obviously the success of Haaland to Manchester City and linking those two up again. How do you see this playing out over the next 12 months with Bellingham's future?
I think it's very difficult to speculate. As you said, Liverpool at one stage, I think, felt as if they might have stolen the march on the competition, but nothing signed. There's been no negotiations between Dortmund and any club. Dortmund have made their intentions well known. They only will part with him for a huge amount of money. They talked about 150 million euros. Now, whether that can be done is a different matter. We saw that Jadon Sancho's value wasn't quite what they wanted, but I think Jude Bellingham is more consistent, has a higher ceiling, and won't have any shortage of suitors. And of course, a good World Cup with England will only help to lift the price even higher. So I think it's in his interest to wait as long as possible. It's certainly in Dortmund's interest not to make any moves now. It wouldn't make any sense. He's still got 2.5 years to run on his contract. And they're still hopeful, not hopeful in the sense of 50-50 or 90%, but there's a sizable chance in their estimation that he might still renew. And of course, that might come with then a gentleman's agreement or a sort of release clause that would then shift the dynamic, but also make it easier for the next step to materialize. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he will leave in the summer.
I suspect I know the answer to this, but while we're talking about Borussia Dortmund, any part of you surprised as to how well it's gone for Erling Haaland?
Not really. I think there was the only question mark was whether Guardiola and his difficult relationship with number nines might get in the way. And the fact that Haaland isn't really that much of a footballer off the ball, doesn't really link up that much, although against Man United he was very strong, it must be said. But before that, we hadn't really seen that much of him. Whether that was too much of a change for City, or him indeed, if he had to change, to gel immediately. But I guess the answer away from the numbers is that the guy is so unbelievably good at doing what he does that it doesn't matter what happens around them. And we've seen a similar effect when Pep Guardiola wasn't fully sold on Robert Lewandowski coming into Bayern. But he very quickly realized that, somebody like that, you have to accommodate them, and your ideas change because he's so good, not the other way around.
England would be well within the rights to say what might have been when you have Erling Haaland, born in Leeds, and Gio Reyna, born in Sunderland, which I now definitely know from watching a clip of Thierry Henry. I think that's gone viral over the last few hours. Another one they lost was Jamal Musiala, and we're talking about Bayern Munich and Robert Lewandowski's departure. Musiala's only 19 as well, had played for England at underage level, but was born in Germany, is now committed to Germany. Can you tell us a little bit about him and the impact he's making this season?
He's been unbelievable. I mean, ever since coming in Hansi Flick's first season as caretaker manager and then winning the Champions League with Bayern as a substitute at the time mostly, he's gone to a similar situation with Bellingham. Of course, Bayern don't have to rely on him that much, but he often makes the real difference when it comes to finding solutions against very defensive sides. And we've seen in the last couple of games where Bayern scored nine goals and didn't concede one, how much of a massive difference it makes when they score the first goal. And Musiala helps you unlock those tight defenses. He's got unbelievable sort of magical ability to dribble past players. It's a bit of a throwback to how football used to look like, when you saw a lot more sort of individual brilliance. Plays without any sense of the occasion or pressure. An absolute delight, and I think he's the one that will hurt England most when it comes to. Well, Haaland would have been nice as well, of course, but having had him already in an England shirt, I think it'll hurt a lot. Seeing him possibly start for Germany at the World Cup, he will start, I think, and he has come to be one of the key players for this team, which is for a 19-year-old again a huge achievement, and shows you just how extraordinary talented this guy is.
For people who aren't following the Bundesliga on a regular basis, they probably look at Bayern going to Dortmund this weekend and think, well, we're 8 games into the season. Bayern are probably 4 or 5 points clear at the top, already a chance to extend their lead. That's not the case. They played 8 games. They've only won half of them so far. It's been somewhat stuttering. Is that a Robert Lewandowski shaped hole that they're trying to fill and trying to change system that's just betting in? Because you look at that team that even lined out in the Champions League, it's Musiala, Sané, Mane, Gnabry, very different styles of players to the traditional number 9 that Lewandowski might be seen to be.
Yeah, I mean, the discussion in Munich always changes after every result. When Bayern win, people say, look at the fluidity. They have goals coming from so many different players. Musiala is actually the most on-target player in this team. Because the goals are spread so evenly. When they don't win, they're saying, well, where's Lewandowski? He would be the guy who'd give them that goal that they're missing. It's impossible to prove one way or the other, whether they'd be as good or as bad with him. I think what is important to understand is that when the offer came in, his mind was made up, and there was absolutely no way that keeping him would have done any good to him, to the club, to Bayern's finances. They needed to generate a little bit of money because of all the money that they spent. And even within the dressing room, I think people were quite happy that he was moving on. There'd been a lot of focus on him. He'd been very public about his wish to leave. Bayern, thrive on the collective. They don't really always accommodate superstars so well, egotistical players who want every ball. And I think sort of his time had come to an end in Munich. So Bayern will have to make do in the meantime. They're not doing so badly, but the verdict is still out, whether they can go and win the Champions League, because Bayern have always had a big number 9 in the last 30, 40 years. So it's a real departure. And of course, as often with big changes, that big change will be seen as the reason for things to go either right or wrong. And we'll have to see until the later stages of the Champions League if it works out or not. Yeah,
you mentioned Pep Guardiola maybe not been totally sold on the idea of Lewandowski at first. Actually, that sort of lineup that they're playing with at the moment it feels very much something Pep Guardiola could get behind.
Absolutely, and Julian Nagelsmann is influenced by Pep Guardiola. His style is very much about possession, about having a lot of players in positions ahead of the ball. Bayern often play without really much of a midfield or a defence. It makes them a little bit vulnerable in the counter-attack if the gegenpressing doesn't work. But when you have that fluidity and when everything clicks and people have an understanding of where they need to go, because that's the other difficulty, right? You can have 3 attacking players or 4. You still need to have some kind of positional discipline to say if one guy goes left, the other guy makes sure that there is presence in the box, etc. That takes a bit of time, and it's not always that easily utilised. But when it does work, also last season, the first half of the season, and again in stages this year, it's looked as good as some of the stuff we saw under Guardiola, which is no coincidence.
Sadio Mane's absence has been levelled as a real reason for Liverpool's struggles this season. How has he settled in at Bayern? Is he showing the impact that he had at Liverpool? Is he as crucial for this Bayern team as he was at Anfield?
Yes and no. He's had a very good start. He was one of the reasons why Bayern started really strongly, scoring lots of goals. Then he had a really lean spell where he didn't score. Bayern stopped scoring. And now the last couple of games, he's back on the score sheet, and Bayern as a team play well again. So he, rather than sort of leading the line, he seems to be more sort of influenced by what happens around him. And my personal theory or hunch is that maybe with the Africa Cup of Nations and all the amount of games he's played, maybe it's just come at a time of the season where he's just a little bit less sharp physically. And for somebody who thrives on the energy and needs that sort of explosiveness to take up these intelligent positions that he has and link up so well, I think he probably can't play at 80 or 85% without missing that little bit. But after the winter break, after the international break, he's come back a lot better. Maybe he's had a bit of a rest, and hopefully for Bayern and for him and for Senegal, indeed, he'll find form again.
One of their other big summer signings was Matthias Ginter, who, at Ajax looked like he was going to become a sort of generational centre half. Such was his talent. Gets the move to Juventus, has success, but I don't know if he gets to that next level. But it's still an incredibly young player. How has he settled in? Is he starting to look like that centre half who can be the mainstay of a Bayern defence for the next 5-8 years?
Yeah, he started well, and he looks like the player that Bayern wanted, which is the kind of defensive organizer that they've been missing since David Alaba has left. They want a player who's very vocal, who orchestrates things at the back, who calls back to midfield, who makes sure that everyone's in the right situation at the right time, and be part of that axis that they have with Neuer, Kimmich and Müller. He'd be the missing link, or they want him to be. The problem in inverted commas that he's had is that the players around him have been playing so well as well. Benjamin Pavard, who Bayern nearly sold, has come back to real good form. Dayot Upamecano's had a couple of really good games, namely against Barcelona in the second half of that win. And Lucas Hernandez looks really good as well. So as much as Bayern want him to be the number one centre-back, on merit, he's not quite there yet. So it's going to be another interesting little sub-narrative, if you will, to see how he can fit in and if he can actually be as dominant as Bayern initially wanted him to be.
It should be tasty on Saturday. Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund level on points. They're both 2 points behind Union Berlin, who are the surprise early leaders in the Bundesliga. 5:30 kickoff for that one in Dortmund. Rafa, always a pleasure.
Pleasure's mine. Thank you.